I've been thinking. When life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Make life take the lemons back. Get mad! I don't want your damn lemons! What am I supposed to do with these?
Take the lemon.
Portal 2 is often celebrated for its sharp wit and inventive puzzles, but beneath its comedic surface lies a secret meaning, one that could change everything about Valve's gaming universe as we know it. The game's abandoned laboratories, cryptic audio logs, and evolving character dynamics weave a story not just about escape, but about the echoes of people who once inhabited this sterile, mechanized world. In this video, we'll take a look at how Portal 2 uses its setting, gameplay, and character arcs to redefine humanity as a legacy of connection, one that persists long after the humans themselves are gone, and what that means for the future of Portal and Half-Life. First, a brief introduction to the game to get everyone up to speed. At the start of Portal 2, players assume the role of Chell, a silent protagonist who awakens from stasis in a crumbling relaxation vault, which we can only assume is decades after the events of the first game. Guided by Wheatley, a bumbling and chatty personality core, Chell navigates the dilapidated remains of Aperture Science's testing facility. Initially framed as a comedic ally, Wheatley helps her reboot the facility's dormant systems, including reviving GLaDOS, the sardonic antagonist from the original Portal. What begins as a collaborative effort to escape quickly unravels. Wheatley, overwhelmed by power after seizing control of Aperture, betrays Chell, ejecting her and GLaDOS into the facility's depths. Now reduced to a disembodied personality core powered by a potato battery, GLaDOS becomes Chell's reluctant companion for the remainder of the game. And it's in these depths of the facility that our real story begins. The descent into Old Aperture is more than a shift in scenery, it's a journey through time. The facility's 1950s-era chambers, with their cracked linoleum floors and flickering fluorescent lights, evoke the optimism of mid-century scientific ambition. Yet this optimism is undercut by decay. Players navigate chambers filled with corroded walls, unstable structures, and rubble. But the most striking thing about this era of Aperture's test chambers and offices, beyond the surface level of what time alone has done to it, is the sheer energy of it all. There is a palpable excitement in each and every section of this part of the game, screaming from wall to wall, from safety posters to rusted railguards that would have shifted under the weight of one person even back when they were new. The scientists of Aperture were ecstatic to be here, to be working on something that no one else in the world could have ever conceived of, let alone had the capacity to build. And after all of that effort, the staff at Aperture must have worked up quite an appetite. That's where the sponsor of today's video, Factor, can help out. Factor offers delicious, ready-to-eat meals that are always fresh and never frozen. There's an absolutely massive weekly menu with 35 options to choose from, including popular ones like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or Vegan and Veggie. Plus more than 60 add-ons every single week, so you can have breakfast, on-the-go lunches, snacks, and drinks to help keep you energized and feeling good for the whole day. And all of these meals are chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. But Factor is also super flexible. You can change your order up every single week with plans from 4 to 18 meals per week, or pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. I've done this right from my phone in about as long as it takes to prepare one Factor meal. It's just another part of the experience made to be extra user-friendly and take only 2 minutes. But my favorite thing about Factor is that it helps me stick to a real routine. I'm not spending any extra time shopping for groceries or cooking. I get to eat a really tasty meal that I can feel good about and get back to working on videos like these. So if you like these videos and want to support me, please subscribe to Factor. You can get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box using my link. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. Now back to the video. The facility's timeline is physically stratified. The further Chell ventures, the more the technology advances. In the 1970s wing, analog dials and handwritten lab notes clutter control panels, while the 1980s section introduces early digital interfaces. their screens surely having seen more error messages in their heyday than pixels could fit on the screen. It was a kind of progress that prioritized innovation over accountability, but that, humorously so, is Aperture's ethos. The Bring Your Daughter to Work Day exhibit seen earlier in the game is notable here as well. Not just for the juxtaposition of childlike curiosity and institutional negligence, but also to really drive home the fact that these scientists at Aperture, these people, these humans, were not just two-dimensional nobodies. They had families, they had children. This place touched the lives of not just the employees, but of those around them. Children wanting to emulate their parents, creating science experiments themselves. Even something as simple as a potato battery. One of these experiments was even made by a kid named Chell, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence, right? Cave Johnson's audio logs, easily one of the highlights of the game, are a study in decline. Early recordings capture his bombastic salesmanship, but later logs reveal a man unraveling. His voice wavering as he orders tests on moon rocks despite their lethal side effects. This descent into desperation on his part is directly tied to Aperture's own collapse. Caroline, Johnson's assistant, is also present in these logs. She contrasts with his mania, really cementing her role as Aperture's moral anchor. As you progress through the game and pick up on more of the hints left in the audio logs, dialogue, and the levels themselves, it becomes increasingly clear that Caroline is Chell's mother. Yet her fate being uploaded into GLaDOS also raises questions about the human legacy. Caroline's loyalty to Aperture, to Cave Johnson, was weaponized against her at this moment. I think it's hard for anyone to argue against that. Discussions about it often say that her humanity was reduced to code, but that's the part I disagree with. To say her humanity was reduced to code is, well, reductive. I would say that her humanity was merely translated, not reduced. Caroline is still in there, and she shows herself by the end of the game. After you and GLaDOS make your way back up to the top of Aperture, it's time to face Wheatley once again. This is an incredibly well done boss fight, and an equally exciting final portal sequence, which sees Chell shooting a portal onto the surface of the moon. It's a huge narrative payoff, since the gels and moon rock tests we've heard Cave Johnson talking about throughout the game were alluding to the fact that moon rock is a material you can use portals on. And right in the moment, it's undeniably satisfying to jettison Wheatley, the guy who betrayed you for a single ounce of perceived power in this one facility, let alone out in the real world, into the cold, dark void of outer space. Upon returning to Earth, GLaDOS takes control back of Aperture, and speaking with Chell directly, she acknowledges that Caroline is a part of her. However, she seemingly deletes Caroline before finally letting Chell leave once and for all. Though, I don't believe she actually deleted her. I think this was Caroline needing to save face, to not break down, or to give Chell any reasons to feel guilty or to stay in Aperture with her. I think this was a mother wanting what's best for her daughter, and it's the most human we see GLaDOS in the entire series. Following the end of the main game is the co-op campaign, where you and a partner, each playing as a robot, either Atlas or Peabody, are tasked with helping GLaDOS complete more tests and go further into the dilapidated Aperture facility. Outside of me highly recommending you grab a friend or your partner to sit down and play this with because it's incredibly fun and worth every second of your time, there's also massive story implications here as well. Atlas and Peabody lack voices, but they communicate through movement. Their exaggerated gestures, stumbling when unbalanced or excitedly waving at one another, mimics a lot of human behavior. Even more so than what we saw from a lot of the machines in the single-player story. In part, it's to make you and the other player feel more connected to these two protagonists. But it also gets directly called out by GLaDOS. As the two of you complete tests, emote at each other, and ultimately get closer to the end goal, GLaDOS will grow frustrated that the two robots are acting friendly, more human. This humanity wasn't simply a result of Chell being present, she's long gone by this point in the story. These beings growing to work with each other, learning to high-five and hug and to care for each other was inevitable. And if you're somehow still not convinced that this was the point of it all, Atlas, Peabody, and GLaDOS end up discovering a vault deep in Aperture that was previously unreachable and off the map as far as anyone knew. A vault full of humans. Over the course of this game, these machines, metaphorically and quite literally, found their humanity. I also want to touch on sounds in Portal 2, as I think it uses audio in a narrative sense to much greater effect than a lot of games do even today. Aperture's soundscape is a palimpsest of human activity. Whether it be the distant clatter of broken ventilation fans in the old facility or the hum of active machinery in the modern chambers, sounds in Portal 2 are never arbitrary, they're always narrative markers. Take the Ratman dens, for instance. Doug Ratman, a scientist, is one of the last surviving humans in Aperture aside from Chell. He navigates the building in secret, using maintenance tunnels and air ducts, and building dens in unused areas of testing chambers whenever possible as safe places for him to survive. When you enter these dens, there's a sudden absence of the ambient noise you've gotten so used to. Instead, you'll find them filled with the sounds of a song on the radio, or maybe just static, and sometimes outright silence. There was a human here before, and this is all he left behind. Among the game's more profound moments is an instance where players encounter several robots singing to one another. These mechanical sentries, programmed for anything but, hum fragments of melodies and harmonize in disjointed choruses, softly singing, their voices glitching and overlapping. This behavior is never explained, yet to me its implications are clear. The machine's desire to sing, to connect through music. It's not a programmed function, but an emergent trait. Their musicality cannot exist in a vacuum. Their song, simple, off-key, yet unmistakably earnest, suggests a cultural inheritance. These machines have no practical reason to mimic human artistry. The only logical conclusion here is that their behavior is a vestige of their creators. Humans, once bustling through Aperture's halls, likely hummed, whistled, or played music to cope with the sterile environment. Over decades, the bot's learning algorithms built to adapt and improve absorbed these patterns, transforming idle human habits into this compulsion to create and connect. A being wanting to learn to be more like its creator, as if it were a child looking up to their parents and making a potato battery. Even in Aperture's cold, automated world, the ghosts of its architects linger in the machine's attempts to replicate human connection. The act of singing is not about perfection, it's about expression. That these robots, supposedly devoid of consciousness, still reach for such expression underscores the game's argument that humanity is not what we are, but what we leave behind. And it's in the act of leaving things behind that we see the true capacity that all of Aperture has for music. As previously mentioned, at the end of the single-player campaign, GLaDOS sends Chell out of Aperture, finally saying goodbye to her. As part of this send-off, we're greeted by an entire Sentry opera, all gathered singing a beautiful rendition of Cara Mia Addio. They're not just there to sing goodbye to Chell, but I believe they're also singing to support GLaDOS, to support Caroline as she lets her daughter go. Portal 2 is a game that insists humanity is more than biology. Its genius lies in its refusal to equate humanity with a pulse. Instead, it asks, what if humanity was measured by what we leave behind? The answer is etched into every test chamber, every robot's clumsy high five, and every static-filled radio transmission. Aperture Science, for all of its dystopian horrors, becomes a museum of human tenacity, a place where families once shared their love of science together, where excitement for the future was a job qualification, and where stasis pods hold the promise of renewal. Should Aperture ever intersect with the broader world of Half-Life, its contribution wouldn't be technology, but proof that humanity persists in the unlikeliest forms. After all, if GLaDOS can learn to let go, if Atlas and Peabody can learn to care for one another, and if robots can want to sing for a grieving mother, then perhaps the fight for the future isn't hopeless. It's a fight that would be waged not just by humans, but by whatever inherits their spirit. Portal 2 argues that humanity isn't extinct. It's simply waiting, humming just beneath the surface, ready to ascend.